Hello everyone and welcome to Inktober Day 1. For this video I am working on a beta fish as I've decided to not go with the standard prompt list. If you are curious about any of the materials that I'm using or any of my goals for Inktober, I will leave those videos linked down below, and I will also make sure to link all of the materials that I'm using in the description box. Also, if you're new here, I hope you would consider subscribing. I do plan on doing all 31 days of Inktober. Also, if you are following along with Inktober, I would love if you leave a comment down below and let me know if you're following the prompt list or what you're working on today. Now for the drawing. This first day, I decided that I wanted to do something that just felt really fun and kind of natural and stuck to a style that I really like doing. When I am inking, I really like doing these kind of broken lines, and I just thought the flowy nature of a beta fish would be a great way to start it and just a really kind of natural progression into Inktober for me. For those of you who don't follow me, my primary focus in art is watercolor. It's what I do most of my work in, and it's just something that I really enjoy. I do have some experience with inking. It's something that I come back to every now and then, and I do like doing it as part of like an illustrative touch to my work. I work in other mediums as well, just not as often. So this is something I have a little bit of familiarity in, but it's not something that I do full time. So to go into Inktober, I really wanted to focus on just kind of having fun with it, embracing the black and white, and really getting into just the details of it. So I'm going in with my TWSBI pen, and I'm just kind of doing a lot of really flowy lines. I did the base drawing in Prismacolor Color Erase pencil. I used a light gray, and I just decided to go over that with this pen, and I'm being really kind of scattered with it. I'm doing a lot of really broken lines, and it's something that it takes a little bit of practice to get into, but once you kind of get going, your hand just kind of falls into this natural pattern with it, and it's just a lot of fun, and it's easy to just kind of get lost in it. I know for myself, sometimes I'm just going along and I don't realize that like my eyes have just kind of almost gotten fuzzy, almost like I'm not focused on what I'm doing. I'm just in this just autopilot state, I guess, adding all of the detail to the artwork. So I really find it fun and relaxing, but I'm just going in and I'm very carefully following the curves that I had set out for this drawing. And I did a couple of like really basic lines in my original sketch, but nothing as detailed as what I'm doing here. I really just wanted to do a couple of basic segments, and for the rest of this drawing, the part that I'm doing in ink, I'm really going in and I'm adding probably 100 different little segments that I'm going through, and I'm paying attention to how the tail moves, and I'm paying attention to the reference photos that I have decided to use and how the tail is kind of broken up and segmented, and I really just want to focus on how it's all going to bunch when it comes to the base of the tail, and how the ends of the tail will kind of look when you have these little folds in it, this natural wavy pattern to it. So I'm really trying to focus on that, and I have to admit, I did a lot of looking at my reference photo at the beginning when I was doing the base sketch, and as I was kind of falling into a rhythm with the drawing, but after a while, I really just wasn't paying attention to it, and it was really just what felt natural and just what I had been doing prior to that while actually looking at my reference photo. So it almost became intuitive after a while. And you can see that the original drawing did have these little broken segments that came up with the back part of the fin, and it just kind of broke apart and it had this like tentacle look to it. But as I was going through and I'm inking in the drawing, they just seemed to look a little bit unnatural to me. They were just kind of holding me back, and I didn't want to have to really sit there and differentiate all of those little segments. So I really just decided to go over it, and they really ended up being hidden pretty well in the final drawing. And then I really wanted to pay special attention to this back part of the tail. It kind of swoops under the other part of it, so making sure that the flowing lines traveled in a way that was opposite from the rest of the tail was really important, and going forward making sure that I was bringing a lot of depth to that area and just kind of showing that it was set back in was important. And you can also see me going to the end of that underneath segment, and I also am trying to build up some shadow and depth down there. Now you can see me going through, and I'm working towards the very end of the tail and working my way inward towards the back end of the fish. And what I'm doing is really trying to make sure to follow all of these curves, and it does get a little hard after a while, so some of it is just that kind of motion that your hand gets used to doing. You can see that my hand is really at the end of my pen. This is not something I usually do. Normally I'm right up on the end of it. I'm a very controlled person when it comes to how I hold my brushes and my writing implements, but for this I'm being really quite natural and loose with it. But just getting into that natural flow and following the pattern and the flow that I'd already created in the tail was a big part in keeping that overall look to the piece once I was done. So again, it really just kind of ended up being intuitive after a while, and I just keep doing that throughout this whole process. I'm just going through and I'm darkening up those areas and adding a lot of depth to it. I will say that this probably isn't the best pen to use. I know it's kind of an expensive pen. I bought it for a different purpose, but there was a bit of an issue with the nib, so I didn't have really any reservations about using it with something like this that I knew would be really intense. But I'm not sure how you would feel about using it. I do know that for this brand, you can replace the nibs, and that I really liked. And also the ink reservoir really allowed more freedom rather than a dip pen. So that is why I chose to do it, and I'm really happy with that choice. I feel like I will continue to use this throughout Inktober, at least until the nib gives out on me. I might replace it, I'm not sure. But for the body of the fish, I really wanted to suggest at the scales. I didn't want that to be really busy since I knew the rest of the fish was going to be just full of this texture and flowiness, and I really didn't want to distract from that, and I also didn't want to add a lot of chaos to the drawing. And you can also see that I'm going in and I'm adding some harsher lines, like a bold kind of line to the outside of some of these segments. I really wanted to differentiate the body of the fish from the tail, and also some of the segments that were in the tail, I wanted to just kind of bring more attention to that and that they were different segments. I don't think that was really necessary. It's something that I just kind of did. It's day one. I'm still falling into kind of a rhythm with everything, and I feel like I'll be able to better differentiate those segments later on in this month, but that was just what I did. You'll also see that I go back through later on and decide to kind of emphasize some of those areas. But for right now, I'm taking some watered down ink and just a really fine brush, and I'm adding some darker areas. I added some stippling to the fish and just kind of suggested at the scales. So here you can see me going back in. I'm going in with a micron pen, mostly because the page was starting to get a little worn down from going over it with the ink so much. So using the felt tip rather than the metal one, it was just a little bit softer on the paper. And you can just see that I'm going through really just kind of, I don't know, kind of quickly actually, and just darkening some of those little segments. I'm just doing this kind of dotted look the same way that I did through all of it, and I'm just really focusing in on these segments. I'm not doing it as spread out and far out as I was before, but being really quick and going back and forth in these areas. It's actually really fun to watch sped up. I wish I could do it that fast in real life. But yeah, just emphasizing those sections and really kind of showing that this is a moving, flowing bit of the fish, and that it just has so much movement to it and depth in it. And I really feel like going back in and emphasizing some of that did a lot for this I keep wanting to say painting, and I know it's not a painting, for this drawing, and I really like how it came out. I do think that I could have done this a little bit better. I do think that maybe in the future I will come back to this and see if I can do it a little bit better. I feel like by the end of Inktober I will have some better strategies for creating depth and having a more diverse area to kind of reference when it comes to creating like shadows and textures in it. So I look forward to seeing my growth at the end of it. And then you can see I'm going in with just a basic alcohol marker. This is actually very light. It's a neutral gray. I think it's a number 1. So it is very light, and you'll see that it lightens actually. And I'm just kind of going over these segments and trying to create just a little bit more depth. So you can see in the fish that it's really not adding a whole lot of depth to it. But I really liked using it, and I just thought it added just a little bit more, and it kind of helped get that point across. And here you can see just the final edit, since I did have the lights up pretty high, and I really like how this painting came out. So I hope you enjoyed day 1, and I hope to see you for all of the other days of Inktober. If you are following along, feel free to comment down below and say what you're working on today. And if you liked this video and if you found it helpful, that is all, and I will see you all tomorrow. Bye!